Hey, thanks for joining me at 9394, a music podcast with me. I'm Travis. I hope you're doing well. What can I say about the Rolling Stones? Living legends, or mostly living legends. It's almost like talking about an Elvis album or a Beatles album or something, but that's the Rolling Stones. They never stopped. In fact, since Josh Adkins and I recorded this episode, they've released a new album, which we had no idea was happening when we recorded this a couple weeks ago. So that's exciting. And I was excited to be able to talk to Josh. I've been on his podcast, All-American Spookshow, which I highly recommend. They don't only do horror movies, they specialize in horror movies, but they also dig into a lot of schlock and like cult classics and really fun stuff. And it's more than just a podcast. They have like a whole multimedia network that they're building. So definitely check them out. And thanks for joining me and Josh as we talk about the Rolling Stones and their 1994 album, Voodoo Lounge. Hey,
Hello.
how you doing?
How's it going, man?
Good, man. Good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
It's been a minute.
It has. It's been a good year, I think, since I was on your guys' show, I want to say. October, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. That was when we did, good Lord, what movie was that?
Wasn't it something to do with werewolves, right?
No,
it was Tales from the Crypt movie. Demon Night.
Yep.
That's what it was.
How could I forget?
Yeah, well, you do a lot of these.
Yeah, a few.
It seems like you guys have definitely been expanding your interest too, which is fun. It's fun for you guys, I'm sure. It's definitely fun for us listening.
It is, but it isn't. Because sometimes you get some heavy turds, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So, sometimes you got to fight through them, I guess.
But it's so far out of our wheelhouse sometimes. Like, literally tonight we're going to record our next cannon fodder, and it's Emmanuel 4.
Oh my fucking God. How'd you come up with that one?
Wheel spin. Because the way we used to decide them was like, all right, each one of us would nominate a movie, then we would kind of spin the wheel, and then that's how. Well, we decided to just put every canon movie, like there's like 300 and something movies on a wheel, and then just spin it and see what it lands on, and then you get Emmanuel 4.
You guys are gluttons for punishment.
Yeah, clearly.
Too far.
How do you and I know one another, Josh?
Well, through a mutual acquaintance, our buddy Donnie.
Yeah, shout out to Donnie fucking Richmond.
Yeah, I think that's either his legal name or his Christian name.
Could be both.
But you guys went to Full Sail together, right? I believe.
Yeah. That's how we met. And then you and I met because you have the podcast, All-American Spookshow podcast.
Yep.
And you invited me on there a couple times. And he's been on my other show, Cinema 9.
We need to get you back on there. It's been too long.
I'd love to be back on. I had so much fun the couple times I was on there. There was the time I did Demon Night, and then there was the time I came on and just talked about werewolves for like a half hour, which made me very happy.
Yeah, well, that was when we did like a whole Summer of the Wolf theme where like everything we watched that summer was werewolf movies, and you had some history with werewolves, right? Like you did some kind of podcast or something.
Yeah, like I'd studied them some in a historical like kind of angle when I was in school, and so I just knew a lot of dumb things about werewolves.
That was the perfect place to come to talk about werewolves.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that I get the chance to just divulge that information. It just rattles around in my head. So I really appreciate you coming on and doing this show. You chose the album. In fact, I gave you a whole list of like 250 albums. And I'm like, hey, here's a bunch of things that prompt an idea in you. And you're like, you forgot Voodoo Lounge from Rolling Stones, which blew my mind that I had missed it. I'm really glad you chose it. Do you remember how you got to this album, how you came to get into it?
Well, for me, it was one of the first CDs I ever bought.
Oh, nice.
I'm not sure when CDs became a thing where everybody was buying them, but I feel that like I was probably a little behind the curve on that.
Mm-hmm.
My brother is a couple years older than me, and he got a CD player. It was probably around the summer of '94, and our parents took us somewhere to, all right, you guys can pick out one or two CDs apiece.
Nice.
My two CDs that I chose were the brand new, had just released prior to that, Hootie and the Blowfish, Crack Rear View.
Of course. I got to get that one on the show at some point.
And then Voodoo Lounge by Rolling Stones.
Nice.
If nothing else, this one kind of has a little bit of nostalgia, for that,
For sure, yeah. The first CDs, like I remember all my first couple of CDs was Godfather from Ned's Atomic Dustbin and Sebado's Bake Sale. So like those two albums for me always have a special place in your heart.
Matter of fact, I got rid of a bunch of CDs, years ago, and I kept that one, like just because of what it was. I didn't dig it out for this to show you, but you know what it looks like. But I've got it. I've got it somewhere. Yeah.
Did I tell you last time that I have the same Infinity Gauntlet there?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I did, but it makes me excited. You're the only other person I know that owns an Infinity Gauntlet. So, what is your favorite song on this album? Are you able to pick one?
It's tough. I mean, because really, to me, it feels like it's a good, complete album.
Mm-hmm.
There are tracks that stand out, of course, but I mean, I guess you just have to go with the main single, "Love Is Strong."
Someday, babe, we got to meet.
And it kicks off the album.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the one that, when I think about this album, that's probably going to be the first one that pops into my head. So I'll probably go with that.
Was that the first song you heard too? Do you remember?
Yeah, probably.
Well, I guess if you bought the CD, but had you heard the single before you bought the CD, or were you like?
I would imagine so. Like, I think this came out in July of '94. I can't remember the exact date, but I would assume that the single probably came out before the album. I didn't look at all when the release and all that stuff. But yeah, that was probably the first one.
And it was a big deal when it came out. I mean, I feel like it had been, I didn't check, but it had been many years between albums from them. I remember it being a big deal.
The previous one was Steel Wheels in '89. So it had been a while.
Yeah, half a decade. I didn't really get into this album. I didn't get into classic rock or the Stones or anything for like another 5 years after this came out, like the late 90s, early 2000s is when I kind of finally went, yeah, I should probably investigate a lot of the classic rock stuff that I've been turning my nose up to for my teen years.
And I was kind of the opposite, because the way I came up was I was a classic rock guy because that's what my parents listened to, my uncles and stuff like that. So like that's what influenced me. So like at this time period, man, I was heavy into Queen,
Nice,
the Doors, the Stones, the Beatles, all the classics of the 60s and 70s.
My dad listened to a lot of smooth jazz, so I didn't really have a lot to draw from there. Luckily, my older siblings had some pretty good taste in music. I didn't really get any exposure to this album until The Sopranos, actually. I really thought going into listening to this album that my favorite song would be Through and Through, which is used in, I don't know if you're a Sopranos fan, but it's used quite a bit in the Funhouse episode, the season finale of season 2.
I remember that.
You know that we take away
Yeah, so I definitely thought that was going to be my favorite song going in, listening to it, since it was the one I was most familiar with. But I got to tell you, I think I have a new favorite Rolling Stones song after listening to this album, which I really never had before, and that's Moon Is Up. Moon Is Up is so good. It's just, I love the bass line. I love the kind of like persistent jam kind of mood without it getting too carried away. Like, it seems like the kind of song you could listen to whatever mood you're in.
Yeah.
I really like it.
It's a great tune, and it really hits heavy, a lot heavier than some of the other tracks on here. This album really kind of goes up and down. You've got some classic kind of heavy rock tunes Stones were known for, but then they kind of bring it down, and you've got some piano type stuff, you know, some melancholy type stuff that, you know, reminds you of Angie and some other older Stones tunes.
Right, and like they'll throw in a harpsichord randomly. What's that one song?
There's a new guy in town, he's been dragging around. He's the figure of youth, and his eyes are so blue, and they're looking at you. So tell me the truth. Well, he's got stories to tell.
It's like a fucking harpsichord, and all of a sudden, you're just like, oh, okay, we're a chamber band here.
It's kind of more stripped down for them than it had been for a while leading up to this. You know, like, it really kind of goes back a little closer to their older roots of the 60s and 70s, because some of that stuff from the 80s was really, you know, more produced.
Yeah.
You know, maybe more of the time, kind of let's fit in kind of thing.
Not their strongest era, I don't think.
Yeah, like there's some disco type stuff, you know, like, so, you know, there's some good stuff there. It's like every album, I guess, but specifically with the Stones, and not everything's a hit. But I think with this one, they really kind of went back a little closer to their roots, at least.
Which is very cool. And I hate to like already get into the whole Beatles comparison thing, which inevitably seems to come up with them. But I was thinking about it listening to this album and how awesome it is that they stayed together. That's it right there. Like, the question is always, which one's better? I don't know. I mean, I guess I prefer the Beatles because I always listen to them more. But as far as better, like a better band in terms of functionality, well, clearly the Rolling Stones are better. Not only did they stay together for decades and fuck one another and still manage to like produce good music and stay together, they have rode this wave of like multiple different albums in multiple different eras and have always kind of maintained some pretty consistently good output from what I can gather.
Yeah, I mean, because no one can deny the output of the Beatles for that small amount of, because that's the thing, like, a lot of people don't dwell on sometimes, is how the Beatles weren't together very long.
Right.
But maybe a decade, like 5, 6, 7 years of their creativity together, and then gone, you know, where
right.
The Stones they're still rolling right now.
And this album's a good example of how they continued to play with their style and both were able to return to some form and also, I think, expand on that a little bit. Is there an underrated song for you on this album?
I don't know. I mean, like, I think by and large, probably the entire album is a little underrated.
Sure.
You know, if you think about it, like this time period, and I know obviously that's what you're doing here with this podcast, like it really feels to me like this time period is kind of one of the last dying breaths, so to speak, of rock.
Yeah,
it really was, because like, yeah, there's been a lot of good stuff since then, of course, and I'm not knocking everything since, but I'm not one of those guys. But this feels like one of the last big gasp of one of the biggest bands of all time. And yes, they have released, I think, 3 or 4 albums since then, 29 years ago.
Yeah, so they definitely slowed down after this, and one of those albums was a covers album, which is not quite, I mean, it counts, but still.
It does, but it doesn't, kind of thing. So really only 2 other studio albums, right?
Yeah.
But I think just because of the time period, everything was kind of going grunge and alternative and everything. And like the tides were changing at the time. So like, I think this one did well, but not as well as a lot of their other albums. And it's probably not looked back upon as one of their classic albums because they have so many.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's like, all right, well, yeah, they did this in 94. Okay.
But it does kind of feel like the adults are in the room with this album. There's definitely this feeling of confidence and just craftsmanship in the songwriting that you can tell they're just professionals.
Yeah, no question about that. I don't know. I mean, like, I guess like Out of Tears has always been a favorite of mine.
I can't feel a thing. I can't shout, I can't scream. Breathe it out, breathe it in. All this love from within. I won't cry when you say goodbye. I'm out of tears, and I won't die when you wave goodbye. I'm out of tears, out of tears.
It really feels like Angie kind of, you know, that melancholy kind of bluesy kind of thing that they're known for with the pianos and everything, you know, like, I don't know. It's always been one of my favorites off of this one.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not that familiar with the album, so I didn't want to pick an underrated song because I didn't have much of a frame of reference. But if I had to pick a second favorite from the album, I think that's the highest point of the album for me is Moon is Down, followed by Out of Tears. It's just they match so well together in terms of mood. And yeah, Out of Tears has a real... I'm surprised I haven't heard it in movies. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's the kind of one that would be like a good emotional climax to a film.
And I just can't pour my heart out to another living thing. I'm a whisper, I'm a shadow, and I'm standing up to sing. And I won't cry when you say goodbye. I'm out of tears, out of tears. I won't die when you wave goodbye. I'm out of tears.
And it may have appeared somewhere, I'm not sure, but that could be the fact that it's the Rolling Stones, and I'm sure it's not cheap to license their music either. So
That's a good point. Unless you're making The Sopranos
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're a fan of your work, then they might come down on the price or something. So, do you have any memories specifically tied up to this album besides purchasing it with your mom? Is there anything else that sticks out in your
No,
memory?
I mean, you know, like I said, this was one of my first CDs, one that I listened to a lot. So, like, you know, yeah, that time period, you know, I was listening to a lot of stuff because, like, I think we're pretty much the same age, right? I was 14. I just turned 14 when this came out. So,
Okay, yeah. So I was born in 80. You were born around...
June of 80. So,
Yep, okay.
you know, you're kind of in that 14-year-old mindset of, I'm going to lock the door, leave me alone, you know. So, like, you know, you listen to this one and, you know, a lot of other stuff of the time. I guess the memories are just sitting around listening to it, just kind of closing the door and maybe turning off the lights and just laying there and listening to the album.
You know, you're bringing me back. It's something I hadn't really thought about much on this show is how much seclusion was involved with the time frame. Doing that exactly. Like, for the first time, you're starting to really pull away from your family and develop your own interests at that age. Yeah, I did the same thing. I just locked myself up in my room and just put headphones on and just lay there and listen to an album and do nothing else, which I can't say I have the time or the patience to do very often anymore.
I agree. Like, not only the time, but you're right, the patience. Like, all right, you know, you're going from here to there. You got to work. There's stuff you got to do. There, you know, you're living life, and
Right.
you don't have time just to stop, put headphones on, and just listen.
Yeah, I'm just going to absorb this album for the 20th
Yeah,
time
yeah,
in my
yeah.
room alone.
And that's true too. You
Yeah.
would do it like 1,000 times, and now I'd be like, I can listen to this album, you know, because I listened to it a couple times for this.
Sure.
Been a while, and yeah, now it's like, all right, I need to move on to something else. Like, I've heard this enough, you know. Back then, you could hear
Yeah.
it 30 times, and you didn't get tired of it.
Yeah, before we had access to every album in the universe, pretty much, I would just buy an album and I would just wear it the fuck out, especially when I got older and could drive, you know, just like in the CD player
Yeah.
over and over again. Now, is there a song you could single out as being, I don't want to say the worst, that's not nice, but, you know, the one that stands out is maybe not the strongest on the album. And there's so many songs, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe Brand New Car. It's like, okay, that's all right.
I feel validated because I didn't really want to pick a song, again, since I'm not that familiar. I didn't want to pick a song but that was the song that to me was like, oh, another rock song comparing fucking to cars. Clever.
Well, that's the Stones for you. They're real subtle. Maybe Mean Disposition. It's not a bad tune. It's just kind of a weird album ender.
Yes. Yeah, especially when you have Through and Through right before that, which sounds like a pretty obvious album ender to me.
Yeah, that seems like the order. Maybe I assume that was probably up to the producers. Obviously, the Stones produced their own stuff, but Donald was. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's his decision. I'm not sure, to kind of leave it on a higher note.
Yeah, it's not that it's bad. It's just kind of, oh, that's what you're ending.
All right, well, that was an ending.
And Brand New Car is not bad either, just kind of lyrically. I mean, musically, it's a little dry compared to some of the other stuff happening on the album, but lyrically, it's kind of like, okay. Although I do have to say the lyrical low point on the album is not, I want to fuck you in the ass. No. It's also in Sparks Will Fly, it's Sharks Will Cry. That is the low point for me. I had to double check the lyrics and be like, did he just say Sharks Will Cry? Yes, he did.
He was running out of rhymes.
Did you ever get a chance to see him live?
No, unfortunately, no. I tried, I want to say it was 99. I live in the Charlotte area. They came to Charlotte, and we tried hard to get tickets for that. Like, this was when you still had to basically wait in line and everything. This is right before the websites really blew up. So you wait in line and everything. And then, like, it was like we were there for hours. And then, like, right before they were about to open the doors, they're like, all right, more people showed up than we thought. We have to do, like, a lottery or something. We went from, like, being, like, 15th or 20th in line to, like, 99th in line.
Oh, no.
Then we got screwed.
That sucks. That's a sad story.
I've got a few stories like that in the old days of trying to get tickets. But, yeah, I still haven't got to see them live. Hopefully. I mean, they've come a number of times since then. It's just now they're kind of pricing me out.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I can only imagine what it would cost to see them at this point. And didn't one of them pass away? Charlie
Watts, the drummer.
Charlie Watts, the drummer, passed, right? But they're still playing without him?
Yeah. Well, they've got a history of just pushing on.
Yeah.
What they've done, I think, since Bill Wyman left, is basically you're not like a full-on member of the Stones. You're just kind of like a touring member, or you're just kind of part of the group, but you're not like one of the official Rolling Stones. So I think all that's left now is Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ronnie Wood.
Oh, okay. What track do you want to use to go out
on? I'd say Out of Tears. I mean, like, that's the one really, and maybe that's just because now it hits me a little differently than it did back then. Like, maybe I'd say back then I was more into the rock side of the album, but now I'm kind of more liking the slower pace stuff. So
the rock stuff on here is good, and there's plenty of it. Like you said, Love Is Strong is such a great kickoff, but the songs that stuck out to me most were definitely the ones that were more lower key.
Yeah, maybe that's age. I don't know.
Theirs and ours.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Would you say there's like an MVP on this album, like a single dude that really makes it?
Probably Keith Richards, and he's actually got a couple of tunes here where he's singing.
Mm-hmm. Which ones does he sing?
Through and Through.
Oh, that's him singing that? That explains why I never really could tell that it was a Stone song when I first heard it on The Sopranos. I was like, I didn't recognize his voice because it's not Mick Jagger. Okay, that explains a lot.
And The Worst.
That's another really good one.
Well, I said from the first, I'm the worst kind of guy for you to be around. Tear me apart, baby, including this all heart that is true, and never ever let you down. Shouldn't stick with me.
That's awesome. I didn't even realize that. I think those are two of the best songs on the album, so go figure.
When you're trying to pick an MVP of the Rolling Stones, like, good luck.
I knew it was a loaded question I was giving to you. And the real question, I guess what I'm really asking you is, who's your favorite Stone?
Oh man, that's tough.
Oh, that's tougher?
That's almost as tough as like, John Lennon or Paul McCartney, It's like, oh, ooh.
I won't hold your feet to the fire. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
I don't want them to hear this and then.
Yeah, they might be in my 20 listeners. It's possible. All right. Do you have anything else about this band or about the album you want to say before we move on to other stuff and wrap things up?
Like I said earlier, I think it's kind of an underrated album because they have so many great albums. This one, I think, gets swept under the rug, especially now, 29 years later.
Yeah.
I think people that like the Stones probably like it, but probably not as much as the other stuff, obviously. But I think really, if you haven't listened to this in a while, you should give it a spin. Give it another listen, give it a chance.
I'm so glad you picked it because I'm definitely a Fairweather Stones fan. I listen to Beggar's Banquet. I'll listen to Exile on Main Street. I'll listen to like the obvious and expected ones. I didn't really dig into the deep cuts in terms of albums very much. So I really had not approached this album. And now that I have, I really enjoyed getting into it the last few weeks. And I'm like, I'm not going to stop listening to it. I'm going to be returning to it. So I appreciate it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Me too. So I always wrap up my shows with asking questions like kind of generally about the 90s, usually about specifically 93 or 94. But in this case, I'm going to ask you questions kind of more generalized about the 90s. And you have a horror podcast. You are a horror guy. Perhaps you're sick to death of talking about horror, but I feel like you're probably not because you've been doing it for years and years.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. And I also kind of took a leap because I'm thinking you're a horror fan. You probably like Stephen King. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you've got that right.
All right. So I'm going to give you a list of all of the TV miniseries based on Stephen King's works that come out in the 1990s. And you can just give me like a little blurb, whatever you want to say about each one of them in terms of what you remember about it. And then just tell me which one is your favorite and why. Some of these I didn't even see. And after making this list, I'm like, oh shit, I need to go back and watch, for instance, the Tommyknockers from 1993. I never saw that. I remember the book, but I never actually saw that. I know it was Jimmy Smits, and that's all I know about it. You ever see that one?
No, there's probably going to be a couple of these that I didn't see.
Yeah, I would imagine. Another one that may have missed. I remember seeing it when it was on was Golden Years in 1991. Do you remember that one? About the dude that's like aging in reverse? Yeah,
that one was pretty good if I recall. Although it's probably been since back then, since I saw it.
Yeah, same. I mean, I thought it was amazing when I was 11. Yeah, I'll say that. Not sure how good it is now.
That's the question. Does it hold up?
Right. Storm of the Century from 1999, the one that he wrote the teleplay for. I never actually saw that. Did you see that one?
Yeah, that was actually really good. Like surprisingly good. Yeah. The look of it probably doesn't hold up. It's a TV thing, so look of it. But yeah,
but the story,
I'm enjoying that. Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, that one was pretty good.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking most. And I'm like, okay, I might actually jump in on that because I don't know why I never saw it before. And of course, there is The Stand from 1994, which I don't know about you, but I've seen many times.
I know you've got the hood drop right there in your eyes, but here I am, baby, on my knees to apologize. There's nothing I won't do for the two of us to make a stand. Baby, can you dig your
And then lastly, The Shining with Steven Weber in the role of Jack Torrance.
I've never seen that one, but I've heard a lot of people say that one's closer to the source material.
Yeah, that's the whole reason that they did it, because King wanted to make something that was like,
Yeah, so I think for that reason, people really love that one.
Yeah.
Because Kubrick went left when he could have went right,
Yeah, and Steven Weber, he's not a bad actor. He's no Jack Nicholson, but I remember him actually kind of doing well here. But again, I was 17. Yeah. So I was impressed by Wings at that time. So I guess which one's your favorite, and or which one of these would you watch now if you had the choice?
Well, The Stand.
Yeah, I figured.
Out of those.
Oh, and It. I didn't mention It from 1990. That was a two-parter. So that's also an option.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I just threw a monkey wrench in there, didn't I?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, because that It is great. Tim Curry.
I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Just awesome.
Hard to pick one between the two?
Yeah, probably I would lean It.
Yeah.
You're putting a gun to my head and you can only watch one. That's it,
Yeah. It's a tough call. It is, yeah. For Tim Curry's performance alone, it's worth seeing that. I'll say that during the pandemic of all times, I went and rewatched the Stand series. And I was like, well, goddamn, this is still really good for TV and for an adaptation of like one of the longest books I could think of.
I was about to say those are good caveats to throw in there for TV and for the fact that the source material is so big. You know, like I would still love to see like a really well done, you know, long length version of that where they're staying true to the source material.
Oh man, I forgot another one, and I need to take a closer look at this list. And then the Langoliers. Also, I didn't mention
heard of
that
it.
one.
Obviously, I'd never seen it.
It had the worst ending ever because there was a bunch of like computer generated images before they were really good at making computer generated images. But Bronson Pinchot was really good in that one, or Pinchot, whatever you say, Balky, if you will. Balky.
That
Balky
guy.
was
Okay,
good.
now I know.
Okay, man. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and doing this with me. I really appreciate it. You're very much welcome to come back on if you want to. And if you ever are in need of guests over at Spook Show, definitely let me know.
We're wanting to get people on, so yeah. Donnie or I will reach out to you and we'll get you on, like sooner rather than later.
That sounds awesome. I'd love to do it. It's been too long.
All right, man.
Thank you, man. Good seeing you. A big, huge thank you to Josh Adkins for coming on the show. Really appreciated. It was really interesting getting his take and his perspective on this band. And also a big thank you to the Rolling Stones for their decades of music. It's funny, at the time of recording this, their new album Hackney Diamonds is literally hours away from being released because I'm recording this on October 19th of 2023 to totally date this episode. And so that's going to be available to you pretty much if you're listening to this, probably. It'd be great if you wanted to come on the show, dear listener. You are very welcome to come on the show if you want to. You could talk about any album you want that came out in 93 or 94. You know what other major band released an album in 1994 that hadn't released anything in a long time was the Eagles. That's right, the motherfucking Eagles. They released Hell Freezes Over, a live album with a few new studio tracks in 1994. Maybe you're a huge fan and want to talk about that album. Maybe. I don't know. I'd be down. I respect the Eagles. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't like most Eagles music that I've ever heard. Who the fuck am I? To pretend like I don't like the Eagles because I like Big Lebowski? It's bullshit. I like the Eagles. Or, we could talk about any other album that came out from the era. Usually we tend to do more indie rock, alternative stuff, but I am very open. Let's talk music. Or maybe you just want to email me and say hi. That's fine too. You can contact me at 9394podcast@gmail.com. Do please follow Josh Adkins and his podcast, his network, his growing media empire, All-American Spookshow. Definitely check it out. It's very much worth your time. It's funny. It's fun. They cover so much nostalgic shit and so much random shit. I highly recommend. And if you like this podcast 9394 that you're listening to, maybe, click that button that says 5 stars or whatever on whatever app or whatever method you're listening to this through. Ratings do help, and I would appreciate it. And that's where we'll leave it for today, I guess. Yeah. Thank you. Take care of yourselves. All right, bye. 9394, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.